everybody. I'm Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness about blindness, visual impairment, and disability in general, in a happy and light-hearted way. For those of you that don't know, I am blind. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia. Try spelling that one. It basically means that when I was born, my eyes didn't develop properly, so I wear prosthetics instead. The goal of this podcast is to remove some of the stigma and stereotypes around disabilities, whilst also having fun at the same time. Each week, I will be interviewing people from all walks of life, including some with hidden or physical disabilities like mine, and getting to know a little bit more about them and the lives they lead. In this episode, I am very excited to tell you that I will be talking to Falklands War veteran Simon Weston CBE. My name is Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. Hi Simon, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Evie, thank you.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I am super excited to talk to you and hear all about your story. You have a really, really fascinating kind of life, and I'm super excited to hear about it and for my lovely listeners to hear about it as well. But before we get into any of that, what have you been up to today?
Oh my gosh, going to the gym, which is a thing that fat old men have to do because, if you don't go to the gym, fatter you're going to be, and it's going to be harder to be older. So I've been to the gym and I've enjoyed that. And then I had to nip over to see people at a mint company. I'm an ambassador, military ambassador for collectible coins, and they have lots of commemorative coins. But I do the military, so I do the military ambassadorship. It's the London Mint office, the Tower London Mint office. So I had to do that down in the valleys, and then I scurried back to be here in time to do your podcast. So that was really important. So yeah, I mean, just the normal things, work. That's it, really.
Yeah, sounds like you've done lots of different things though. I mean, being an ambassador for that particular company sounds like it's really interesting.
It is, because you get to commemorate the remembrance and all of your friends, but also you get to encourage other people to commemorate and remember as well. It's just really important that people do remember sacrifices. It's nothing about glorifying war, because trust me, I'm the least likely person to glorify anything to do with people suffering. But at the end of the day, these young men, young women are lovely. They were lovely and they were decent, and they just chose to do a job. And if they don't make it home, then it went wrong. But they chose a job that would help protect and defend others who can't protect and defend themselves. And that's kind of what I always think about. But I remember how funny and how bright and how daft and crazy these people were. And they made me laugh every single day, harder than I ever laughed since I left the services. But I laugh every single day because they were great fun. And they had such incredible senses of humour. And they were barking mad, a lot of them as well. And they'd all put their hand up to be the idiot that some village was missing somewhere in the world. But that was the joy of it. And they came from all over the world as well, which is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. And by remembering them, I suppose we're kind of helping their stories to live on.
Absolutely. It's something that they say in different religions. If you say their name often enough, they're never forgotten. And and the Jewish, they have a thing where if you lay pebbles on the headstone or on the grave, that means that they're remembered, and if you say their name often enough, but that goes through an awful lot of religions. Um, but I just like to say the names because it means that I've not forgotten them. Uh, and they were important to me. And that's more than anything else. They were important to me. They were important to their families. So, it's hugely emotional. And as I get older, I get more emotional, which is a problem because I find myself choking back tears a lot. But that's what old soldiers do. We get old and we get more emotional. I'm not sure why, but we do.
Fair enough. Well, I suppose if we're going to talk all about your life and your story, we should probably start at the beginning. So, could you tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like?
Oh, my childhood! I had a wonderful childhood. I was born in Caerphilly Miners Hospital. Spent the first year of my life in South Wales, and then I went with my parents to wherever they were stationed. I don't remember the first part of it, as you can imagine, but then I remember growing up in Singapore. I remember growing up in Lincoln in a place called Nocton Hall, where the RAF had a big base. Um, and then I remember them leaving the armed forces. And from about the age of 7 or 8, I then grew up in South Wales. I didn't particularly like the change that happened, but it did, and I wasn't in control of that because I was only a small boy. And then I grew up in the valleys of Wales, and I loved that. That was an adventure playground. It was before they had all these huge, fancy, fast cars that people had. A lot of people couldn't afford cars, so the roads were quiet, and we could do a lot more. We could play football in the street. Um, yeah, and my grandmother had a huge patch of land at the back of her house. So we used to collect trees and for bonfire night. And we used to have a magnificent big bonfire every year, which didn't suit some of the families around the area because they had telephone cables going across my grandmother's land. And we used to burn their telephone cables every year. Uh, but it did stop them phoning the police until the bonfire was over. So yeah, and then at the age of 15, I joined the military. Signed up, and then I went to work in the military at the age of 16. I had some obstacles to clear out of the way, but then I went to the military at 16, and I never looked back, really.
Well, it sounds like you had a super interesting childhood, but it sounds like that sense of adventure and that it sounds like you were outdoors a lot as a kid, and that sense of adventure and that sense of being outdoors was a really important part of your childhood. How important do you think it is for you to kind of be outdoors and be adventurous as a kid?
Oh, I think it's important for everybody to be outdoors, whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult. Um, I don't think there's any greater sound than Mother Nature. I don't think there's any greater feeling than wind. And to be honest with you, if you've got the right clothes on, because there's no such thing as bad weather, just the wrong clothes. Um, I like being out in the rain. Uh, One of the greatest things is to come home and get out of the rain and out of the cold and get into nice, clean, dry clothes and have a nice mug of tea or coffee or even hot chocolate or cocoa or something like that. But there's nothing nicer. And I love being outdoors. I think it's one of the best feelings in the world. I would heartily recommend it to young people, but I think the allure, the draw of computers and games and phones seems to override a lot of young people's adventure. And I think parents have a bit of a more responsibility to encourage them to be more adventurous, to climb more trees, to get out and skin their knees and their elbows and the palms of their hand by falling down. It's just all part of growing up, I think, adventure. But it comes down to to adults to encourage young people to get out more. I don't know how you feel about it, Evie, being out in the fresh air with all the birds singing and the wind blowing and the sun on your face. But it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
I quite like it. I like being in the garden in the summer. We're lucky to have quite a biggish garden, and I like being out there in the summer as a kid. We still have them, but as a kid, I had a swing, I had a slide, I had a trampoline, so I spent most of my time playing on them. But now I do quite like listening to the birds. Um, and I do like being outdoors. Some of those, like, I wasn't much for climbing trees or stuff as a kid because I think the loss of sight probably hinders that a little bit. But I did always quite like being and I did always like being outdoors, and now I'm older, I quite like going for walks and stuff.
I think you got the right idea. You're right about the climbing trees. With the hindrance of eyesight loss, missing the right branch would be a problem. You come down to earth with a bump.
Yeah.
But no, I mean I think the greatest thing that I've tried to tell youngsters, even my own children, is read books. If you're going to do anything, read books, because a book can take you anywhere in the world, and it takes you there without any real danger. If you let your mind wander into the fantasy world of being an ocean captain or a submarine captain or the greatest mountain climber or even a soldier or a cowboy or whatever you want to be, the great thing about books are they allow you to escape into another person's world. But, you're never going to get shot at. You're never going to get run down. You're never going to drown. And that's what books do. So I was an avid book reader when I was younger as well. So, but no, I think being out in the wind and the cold and the rain and the sun and the warm, it just, yeah, it's free.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you about reading. I was such a book reader as a kid. I used audiobooks a lot. You can get Braille books, but they're massive because Braille's bigger than print. I can read Braille books, but as a kid, I always had some form of audiobook. And I don't even know how many books I read as a kid and how many books I've read to date, but I pretty much always have some sort of audiobook on the go that I can kind of pick up or drop when I need it. But it's just I think it's a brilliant form of escapism. Like you say, just kind of transitioning into another world that, you're completely safe in, but it is an amazing form of escapism. And speaking of books, I believe that you have written several books yourself. So could you tell me a little bit about the books that you've wrote?
Well, there are 3 autobiographies, and I never thought I would do enough in my life to fill one, but to do 3 is pretty amazing, I think. But then I've written 4 children's books and 2 novels. So I've done 9 books. And yeah, I mean, I think I'm proudest of the children's books because of my life being burnt, being disfigured, being an ex-soldier, ex-prop forward in rugby, none of which lend themselves to being a child-friendly entertainer. So, to write children's books and be childlike, which is, if I'm truthful, is very much my go-to. I'm more childlike than most children. I get told off by my granddaughter for being too immature. But I love that. I love that. Children grow and they try to be older than they should be. Well, as you get older, you become more childlike and try to be younger than you can ever possibly be again. But I'm proudest of the children's books because so many barriers were put in my place in the way of trying to stop me doing it. But sometimes you've got to go to the wall, as they say, to achieve some of the things that you want to, that other people try to dissuade you from. And I'm sure you found that, Evie, with your sight loss, that other people try not to let you do things or say, perhaps better not. But at the end of the day, if you don't try, you don't know. And if you don't give it your best shot, how on earth are you ever going to find out what you're capable of? When I got injured, people said to my mother, "Oh, we'll come and we'll put aids and adaptations in the house." And my mother went, "Absolutely not. I want to find out what he can do, not what he can't do." You know, if I had aids and adaptation, I would have never have been able to just use round objects because of my hands or sharp objects. You've got to find a way of doing things that other people think you probably can't. And when people said I couldn't write children's books, then that's a red flag to a bull to me. You've just got to try things, and if you try and it doesn't work, that's fine. You've learned something. But if you don't attempt anything, then you're guaranteed it's not going to work. It's going to fail because you never made any attempt. And I think more people need to make more attempts at lots of things. We all have great ideas, but if you don't act on them, well, how are you ever going to make it work?
I could not agree with you more on this. And I do think, yes, when you have, I mean, I think in life, and but especially when you have some sort of disability or injury or whatever that may be, you get told that you can't. And some people get told it more than others. But I think at some point we will all experience the thing of you can't or you shouldn't, or that's probably not a good idea. But if you don't try, you won't know. And I sometimes get asked for like to give people advice, and that is always the advice I give, that if you don't try something out, you won't know what's going to happen. And I'm a bit guilty myself of going, oh, that's probably not going to go well, I probably shouldn't do that, and being a bit negative, which I think as humans we naturally are. But if you never know what's going to happen. You can't see into the future. So you never know what's going to happen unless you try something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I used to race cars, and I remember once racing a car and I lost control of it and it hit a barrier at over 100 mile an hour. And as I was spinning into the barrier, I was thinking, oh, this wasn't a good idea. But if I had, if I hadn't have done it, I would have never have known whether that corner was a good idea or not, or whether I'd have gone into it too quickly. I just think there was a great actor. You probably have never heard of because you're too young, but he was called Anthony Quayle, and he once said, and you always find people will quote other people. He once famously said, "If you've never had any danger in your life, hurry up and find some." And what I believe he meant by that was take a risk on yourself, take a gamble. Because if you don't, how are you ever going to find out whether you like something or don't like it? But, hurry up and find it. Whatever, I'm not saying you've got to go and deal with a snarling lion, because that's just stupid. But I am saying that if you go into the world and you're frightened by things, you never know whether it'll work. You never know what will come from it. But you've got to have a go. You've got to give everything a whirl. Yeah, I mean, that's part and parcel of why I am who I am. I'm scared of a lot of things, but I'm not so scared that it's going to be terminal. I'm terrified of heights, but I walk to the edge of buildings. And I've jumped out of airplanes. I've ridden on the wings of aircraft. I've I've got a pilot's license. I've done all those things, but I'm still scared of heights. Hasn't changed anything. It just means that I've enjoyed my life. And when you jump out of an aeroplane, oh my good gracious, the wind finds an inconvenient way of going straight up your trouser leg and going where it shouldn't. So, but yeah, so yeah, I mean, there are lots of things in life that you just have to take a gamble on. But the biggest one that you have to take a gamble on is yourself.
Absolutely. And I think we are quite guilty sometimes of kind of sticking to what we know, sticking to our bubble and sticking in our comfort zone, because it's that fear of the unknown, I think, a lot of the time. But I think the quickest way to break that fear is to take risks.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't know what scares you. I don't know what frightens you. But like I say, with the heights for me, but I can't even watch heights on the television. My legs go numb. But that doesn't matter. I'll still watch it. I'll still shiver and go through it. And my wife will still laugh at me. And she has done for 35 years, laughed at me. This is true. Um, we once did a TV show together. It's the only one we did properly together. And it was called Unbreakable. It was about couples. And I was taken up in a 140-foot cherry picker. We were supposed to bungee jump, the two of us. And she shoved me out. She pushed me out of the cherry picker. And I'm bouncing along on this rubber band. And I took all the skin off my shins, off my lower legs. Oh my God. Do you know, I'm surprised that we were still married after that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. I would have screamed, but I lost my voice going down. It was so terrifying. But yeah, that's an absolute true story. It was a couple of years ago, not long ago. I'm surprised we still married 35 years on now. It could have been ended at 32 or 31 years.
That's that's brutal. That's like, I mean, you clearly love each other that very, very much, but that's brutal.
Well, I used to love her before she did that. No, I probably just like her a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, same thing. But yeah, that's that's very harsh. But I mean, fair enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyways, your military career is what I kind of want to talk about. Now, you've mentioned that it began at 16 when you joined the Welsh Guard. So
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about that time leading up to the Falklands War?
Oh, crikey Moses. Well, joining at 16, I had to go through all my training in Purbright, which was a 12-month. And that was brutal. It really was brutal. Um, but I played a lot of rugby. I got Sportsman of the Year award in my training. There was lots of things that happened then. Did tug of war, athletics, and stuff. So I was a sportsman in the army. I loved it, and obviously you've got to do your training as a soldier. But we went to Berlin, where I guarded a man called Rudolf Hess in a place called Spandau Prison. And Rudolf Hess was very, very infamous. He was Adolf Hitler's second man in command. So he was the right-hand man of the most notorious world leader of the time. I think that for me, it was one of the biggest eye openers. But I tell you what made me laugh. I was standing 3 foot away from Rudolf Hess, and being a 17-year-old from the mining valleys of South Wales, I thought I was clever and worldly wise. I had no idea who he was. It shows how thick I was. But that was really sad. Spandau Prison was an awful place, and he was the only prisoner in there, and he died in there. Which I can't moralize one way or another on it, to be honest with you. But then we left Berlin and we went to back to Britain to a place called Queen Elizabeth Barracks in Purbright, just above where I did my training. And then we went to Northern Ireland, where we had a great tour, apart from losing one guy called Paul Anthony Fryer, who was a lovely, lovely guy. He was only about 4 months older than me. We lost him in a place called Silverbridge in South Armagh, Crossmaglen. Never forget that. And a lovely fella called Windy Miller, who got blown up as well, but he took mostly shrapnel injuries. There were lots of other stories and incidents that went on with Northern Ireland, but we haven't really got forever to talk about everything. But we left Northern Ireland, came back. I went to being a tracksuit soldier, playing rugby for the battalion and the Army under-21s. And then we we just went through all the different things. I didn't do a huge amount of public duties, which is Queen's Guard, stand outside Buckingham Palace or St James's Palace, Windsor Castle, Tower of London. But I did all of those things. I did do all of them. But I played a lot of rugby. And I was in the athletics team and the shooting team. So, and then we, as time progressed on, then we went to Kenya, which was absolutely amazing. I remember us driving through the migration of the wildebeest. They're like great big cows, and there were thousands of them, absolutely, in a big long herd, just as far as the eye could see. And we drove through them, and that was unbelievable. So hippopotami, so a lot of the wild pigs, we saw a lot of the wild pigs and lions. We built a little bridge about, I don't know, about 30, 40 meters from a lioness who was sleeping in the shade. And we only had one wilderness guide with us, but he did have a very big rifle. But we built this little bridge that wouldn't get washed away in the rains so that people could drive through. That was wonderful. Kenya, having an elephant rub alongside, a wild elephant rub alongside the 4-ton vehicle that we were in. We lifted all the canopy off the sides. We were stroking this wild elephant, and he was scratching himself on the side of the truck, and he took all the paint off the side of the truck, which was marvelous, absolutely incredible. And you see giant lizards and crocodiles. We went to a safari park, and we just had the wildest time. But we were always working as soldiers, and then we came back from there, and again I went back to playing rugby, and we did a thing called, this is all before I'm 20, so I'm 20 now, just turned, and then we did a thing called Spearhead, which is readiness for trouble anywhere in the world. And as we came off Spearhead, Mr. Galtieri decided that he was going to invade the Falklands. He invaded, and I was told that, along with the rest of my regiment, we were part of what they call 5 Brigade, which was the Welsh Guards, the Scots Guards, and the Gurkhas, and we were going to the Falklands to reclaim them. So we were part of the second wave, and we went on the QE2, which at the time was the most luxurious ocean-going liner in the world. And we went down and followed the Marines and Paras down to the Falklands. We sailed via West Africa, stopped at Freetown, and then we went tactical, which meant we took all the external lights off the ship, and we blocked up all the portholes so that nobody could see our lights at night. And then we sailed down to South Georgia, where we did a thing what they call cross-decking. We saw where the Marines had engaged the Argentinians. They brought on a helicopter and sunk the Argentinian submarine called the Santa Fe. And they put a big hole in the side of her. But then they got captured by the Argentinians and taken prisoners of war. And then we sailed into the Falklands, sailed through the Navy, ships everywhere, far as the eye could see, great big grey ships. And then we got to the islands, and we went into a place called San Carlos Water, where we stayed for about nearly a week. And then we got ordered to move. We marched to the top of the hill, marched back down again, because the tractor they gave us wasn't good enough to take our real heavy equipment. And then we were put on board HMS Fearless, which was the flagship, like the headquarters of the whole conflict for us. And we got taken to Lively Island. They split the regiment against all the rules. So we split the regiment, and then we got taken back around. The weather was horrendous that night, and we only had 2 landing craft. So they took the rest of us and put us on board the Sir Galahad. And she'd been hit 2 days before with a 500-pound bomb, but they had to remove the 500-pound bomb out of the side of the ship. And that's still been dropped in the water and still where it was left, all 40-odd years ago. And then we set sail then. They welded up the hole, brought on more people than they should have had on board, took us around to to a place called Fitzroy. We were supposed to go to Bluff Cove, but there's a lot of stories to be told about that will come out, but I won't say anything now because it's still open to wait for the full inquiry to be reopened. But we were taken to Fitzroy, and whilst we were in Fitzroy, we were there far too long. The landing craft had been taken by somebody else, and we were left without any vehicles to get us off, and they tried to put us on board vehicles that were full of ammunition, which got hit, and those vehicles have never been seen since. So they'd have put 400-500 of us on those vehicles, and there would have been 400-500 killed. So yeah, lots went wrong. Lots and lots went wrong. But from my point of view, even though I was classed as the worst injured to make it home alive, I survived, and that was the most important thing. I survived. There are 48 men on board my ship who'd love to have my problems. So, yeah, and that was it in a nutshell.
Wow. I mean, I think that's a really positive and a really nice outlook to have on that situation. And it was I don't even know how to, it was a horrific situation for everyone, but you, yes, were the worst injured. So when the ship was bombed, you basically sustained severe burns to your body. Can you tell me about kind of what you remember of that day, if anything?
Oh, I can remember most of it, unfortunately. They say that when you go through life, and you'll appreciate this more than most, is the thing that you always remember are smells and sounds. And the smells that day and the sounds that day were horrendous, and the sights were equally as horrendous. I won't go into them. I don't think anybody's done anything to hurt me, and I don't see why I should give them nightmares. But I was very fortunate that when I got out of the smoke and the flames, there was lots of people lying down on the floor still, and other people helped me. One guy called Jimmy Salmon. I joined the army with Jimmy, so we joined as 15, 16-year-olds together, and Jimmy helped save my life. So he was best man at my wedding. And I just think that, it was fortuitous that Jimmy recognized me because I didn't look like me when I came out of the fire. None of us looked like ourselves. So we were all very, very badly burned. But he got me to the top of the ship, and then he decided to cut all my clothes off me, which then meant I was in a t-shirt and my underpants, which was very cold because the Falklands is cold. And they wrote a big M on my t-shirt to say that I'd had morphine, which is a painkiller. And then I was quite put out about that because it's my favorite t-shirt. But, you have childish thought processes all the way along. And then they took me off in a helicopter and took me to a field aid station in Fitzroy. And then they knocked me out because I was going into shock and I was unsettling everybody. And the next thing I woke up, I was in the Red and Green Life Machine, which was a field hospital. And then the Argentinians bombed that. One bomb landed outside and hit an ammunition dump and killed 5 people. The other 2 hit the hospital roof and didn't detonate for whatever reason. I'm not a deeply religious man, but if I find out which religion was looking after me that night, I'll join that one. But then I heard they get everybody out into the bunkers, into the trenches, and they were removing all these stretchers. And then I heard somebody say, "What about this fat one by here?" They were talking about me. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about him." He said, "He's fast asleep. He won't know whether he lives or dies." So they left me where I was when the hospital got bombed. So I just count my lucky stars all the time. I don't know why I do the lottery, to be honest with you. I think I've used up all my lucky numbers by surviving. And then they took me out to the hospital ship, where they tipped me off the stretcher twice, trying to get me through the doorway. And in the end, I said, "Oh, blow this, just show me where I got to go," because I was blind at the time. I was blind for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then I just took their arm and followed them where they wanted me to go. And then from there on in, I was given the last rites by the Catholic priest on board. Then they took me up to operate on me, and they operated on my eyes, and my eyes had slightly opened, and I could just see shadows. And I remember a nurse saying to me that she'd be there when I wake up, and they operated on my eyes and saved my eyesight. And then I was there for 3.5 weeks, and then they sent me home because I was fretting so much that I wanted to go home. They thought that I would die if I didn't go home, but they thought that I would die on the trip home. So in the end, they relented, acquiesced, and sent me home. And I could see by this point, they had to resuscitate me on board the hospital ship, taking me to Montevideo in Uruguay. They cleaned my wounds with a brush. They give me a lot of painkillers, I've got to be fair. I don't take drugs or painkillers if I can avoid it. But they were welcome at that point. But then they put us on board an aircraft, and the aircraft decided to have its engine explode and land all over the runway in Montevideo. So they had to get another aircraft to come and get us. And then I made it home. So, yeah, after being blown up, I went from 18.5 stone fighting fit infantry soldier, prop forward, to just under 8 stone in 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
So,
yeah, just like I'm kind of speechless in a way, because it's such a horrific thing to have to go through, and something that absolutely no one deserves to go through. And hearing you talk about it, then it is a truly life-changing event. And I know that you sustained 46% burns to your body, and I can imagine the amount of treatment and recovery that must have gone into that was long and truly intense. So can you tell me about some of the various operations and treatments that you underwent during your recovery?
I've had about 97, 98 operations. I've had between 500 and 700 units of blood and blood products. A lot of the operations were necessary because of infections. Kept eating the skin grafts off my body. So, I spent sort of close to 6 years in hospital, on and off. But, a lot of it was necessary. I had my last operations about 5 or 6 years ago, and I swore I'd never have any more done again unless it was absolutely necessary. It's been a roller coaster, I've had pins through my fingers to stiffen them, to make them functional. I remember I used to have to wear a body stocking to keep all the dressings on, because if they'd just used bandages, I would have got too hot. It was one of those things, but at least I was in a military hospital. We haven't got them anymore, but I was in a military hospital, and it was funny, very funny in hospital. And if you've got to be anywhere, you might as well be somewhere where it's funny. And there was lots of idiot soldiers and sailors and airmen in this place. And I made lots of friends in there and just had lots of fun. But it was a weird place to be. Just a weird place because, I was still a young man. I was only 21, 22, 23, something like that, when they kicked me out of the army. So I was still very young, didn't know what the world had to offer. I didn't know what I was capable of. So we just had to go with the flow, really.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the amount of positivity that you have about it is, I think we could all do with a little more positivity, and it fascinates me. And I think it's such an amazing, like I said earlier, an amazing outlook to have. But you talk about kind of being in a military hospital and in a way the amount of fun that you had whilst you were there. Do you think that humor and making light out of situations is a kind of good coping mechanism that you use?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all suffer terrible stresses. We all have moments where you think, oh my God, what am I going to do about this? Um, and when somebody says something very humorous and you all start laughing, problems don't seem quite as bad. Uh, but there's no point in, as the old adage says, there's no point in crying over spilt milk. What you can't change or do anything about, put to one side and deal with what you can deal with. Look to what you can do. Try and do whatever you can do to make a difference. And that's pretty much all you can do, whether it's a difference in your life or somebody else's. As long as you're making a positive contribution to life, you've got it right. But for me, I was one of these guys. I'm not one for settling for things. I've never accepted my injuries. Um, I accept that I've been injured, but I don't accept my injuries. Because if you accept your injuries, and I suspect you're a lot like this, Evie, if you accept what's happened, then you don't try to do any more. The fact that it's happened, you accept that side of it, but you don't wallow in it. You don't look to be sympathetic about yourself. You say, well, look, this is what the good Lord gave me. He's given me lemons. Now I'm going to make lemonade. You know, and I don't like lemons, by the way. Um, but the fact of the matter is, I was lying in hospital bed, and there was a guy called Grant Grinham across the road from me, a paratrooper, and he was only 18 when he got blown up. And it was a swordfish, a wire guided rocket that hit the wall, and it blew back and took his one leg off, and he was going to have to lose the other. And I said, Grant, you're only 18. I said, how are you coping? I'm only 2 years older at the time. I said, how are you coping with that? He said, Simon, he said, you just got to make the best of a bad job. And I kind of thought, that sums up life. Make the best of a bad job. Don't look for sympathy or pity, because at the end of the day, all I want is people's respect. And I don't want people to feel sorry for me. What's happened has happened, but it could have been so much worse. So I just think that I just enjoy my life the best I can. I've got 3 children. I've got 3 grandchildren, 3.5 grandchildren. My daughter is pregnant with our 4th grandchild. So, I'm blessed. I am truly, truly blessed with a happy, wonderful world and life. Things go wrong, things go right. But, if you're just going to spend a whole time worrying about the wrong things, then, it's like being a victim. If you all you see yourself as a victim, then that's all you'll ever be, is a victim. Things happen, and it's how we deal with them. So it's not about what happens to you, it's what you do about it and what you're prepared to do about it. Because, let's be honest, we all feel like crying sometimes. Even big macho men who've been soldiers feel like crying just because the day gets too much. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, deal with what you can deal with. If it hasn't happened yet, then don't worry about it until it does.
Yeah, I guess so. I think that's an like such an amazing take to have on things. And you say that what you want is people's respect, and I can almost guarantee you that that is something you definitely have from a lot of people. But years on from your injury, what advice would you give to someone in a similar position now?
Um, Go with the flow. Don't try to beat the injury because there's no point. And by that, what I mean is, if you go with the flow, do what is necessary to get you well. Don't try to rush the injury because it will get well as quick as it wants to get well. It will heal as quick as it's going to heal. The same with a broken leg, the same with a sunburn. You know, we all think, oh, there's an instant cure for sunburn. There's an instant. There isn't. It takes as long as it takes. Don't rush it, but spend your time wisely. Think about things, read about things, look at the future, enjoy the rest, because you'll never get that rest again. Sit back, put your feet up, and say, well, I can't do this because physically it's not possible right now. But it doesn't mean to say that it's not possible later on. I lift heavy weights. I love lifting heavy weights. And the biggest and most difficult weight to lift is your backside off the couch. If you lift your backside off the couch, it means you're getting up to go and do something more positive instead. So, I love going to the gym. I love doing things with my grandchildren. I love going on holidays, love going on cruise lines. I love doing all of those things. But if you shut yourself away, the whole world shuts itself off from you because the world won't come looking for you. You have to go looking for the world. But there's an old Chinese proverb. It says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Begins with the first step. And that came from a film called The Inn of Happiness or something like that. And I remember it. And it really is all about that, just find the joy in life. But if you are in a situation, you are stuck in a hospital bed, you are stuck and you're not able to go out and enjoy the fresh air, you're not able to do a lot of things because of what's happened, let the doctors and nurses work their magic. And then don't be impatient. Don't be angry with people around you because all they want to do is love you. All your family, all your friends, they just want to love you. And they will support you in whatever it is you're trying to achieve. But you've got to let yourself heal first. And whether that's physically or mentally or both, because you do suffer mental injury as well when these things happen. And I was very fortunate. The man who blew me up, who's now a firm friend of mine, a man by the name of Carlos Cachon, he helped me no end overcome my demons, my mental health problems. And he didn't have to. That was what they call moral courage. He did things because it was the right thing to do. He caused my problems, and as he said, I've helped cause his problems. Hopefully I can help cause his solution. And that's humanity. That's a moral, decent human being. And I've been very blessed to have the right people come into my life at the right time.
Definitely. And I wanted to talk about this in the way of I would imagine that the transition to kind of learning to live with your injuries, which were obviously very severe, and coming to terms with them must have taken a lot of inner strength, and it must have taken quite a toll on you mentally. How did you find that transition?
With great difficulty. I mean, I'm not going to lie and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was very, very difficult. Nobody had ever trained me to deal with being different, looking different, having the scars, having people stare. There's a lot of things, and people saying really rude and nasty things, which a lot of disabled people, whether you're born with a disability or it happens because of incident or accident or deliberation. If people have done something to you, look, you have a lot of adjustment to make. And I was still a young man, and my relationship fell down, and she went her way, which was hard to deal with. I just kind of look at life and think, it was hard then, but in some ways it was worth going through it, because I see falseness for what it is. And I was living in a false world. People were being too nice to me. And it's not the world I'm used to. My family are tough lovers. If they need to tell you the truth, they tell you the truth. But at this point, they weren't being honest with me. And I needed honesty. And going to meet Carlos and going down to the Falklands again and all of those different things helped me change. It helped me to grow as a human being. But the transition is not easy. And anybody that says it is, good luck to them. I think you're either mad, bad, or sad. But good luck to you. If you can get away with it and you have no repercussions from being badly injured, then good luck to you. It's not for me to judge, really. I just know what I've been through and what I've seen and witnessed through other people. But go your own merry way, be lucky. That's the way I think about it. But I was very fortunate, and a lot of people in today's modern armies that have been to Afghanistan and Iraq and such like, they will never know. They will never know what I was able to enjoy, because they will never meet the terrorists who attacked them and did what what they have done to them. So, but at least I had a real man that I faced, and he bettered me that day. But in the end of it all, we won the war.
Absolutely. I find it really lovely, but also really fascinating that you're now, like you say, really firm friends with the person who kind of set off the bomb that caused those injuries. How did you end up becoming friends?
Well, it was after 10 years. I'd always said I wanted to see if he had life in his eyes, because I had this nightmare of this screaming black jet that used to fly over me every night. And there was this hooded figure with flaming red demonic eyes. And I just wanted to see if he had life in his eyes. And I'd said this to a guy called Malcolm Brinkworth, who made the films about me. And he, unbeknownst to me, he set up the film and then asked me if I wanted to go. He would have been in a real sticky situation if I'd said no. But I'd always said I wanted to go and meet Carlos. And I was very fortunate that the Argentinian government of the time said yes. Carlos said yes. And we met. It's a weird one. But that's how it all came around. Malcolm Brinkworth sorted it all out. And then I was able to go and get rid of my demons. I've never had a nightmare since. So since meeting Carlos, he was such, and I'm bigger than Carlos. I mean, I'm only 5'10", but Carlos is only about 5'5". I could have squashed him like a bug. But he was such a nice guy, and he was so kind. And I met his wife Graziella and his son and daughter Santiago and Andrea, which is odd because Santiago is St. James and Andrea is the female version of Andrew. And my oldest son is James Andrew. That's his name. So I don't know whether there's something just coincidental or Freudian or whatever in there. But I suspect because they're Argentinian Catholics, they've probably got about 16 other names that go with their first name, because that's the way the sort of the Argentinians and the Italians and Spanish, they have like loads of names. And they also have, what do they call it, when they have their, they do their Catholic something or other, communion or something, then they get given a name as well. So it's a Catholic name. So it's, yeah. But no, I mean, he's a good guy. And that's how it all came around anyway.
Absolutely. And I think it's really nice that you guys met and even nice that you're firm friends now. And I suppose in a way that maybe helped you come to terms with the situation a bit more as well.
Yeah, any act of kindness does not go wasted. Um, and that's what we experienced. And when we went around Argentina, all we met was kindness. Um, so I will never forget the Argentinians for the kindness they showed. But wherever I've been in the world, I've met kindness, I've met rudeness and ignorance from people who should know better. But look, I can't change those things, and I'm not responsible for how those people are brought up and how those people react to things that they aren't used to. But you're always going to have people like that. You're always going to have people who are rude and ignorant. But that doesn't mean to say we have to react. We don't have to get caught up in their stupidity. We just have to be the best version of ourselves we can be, and rise above it, because you only win when you have the moral high ground, and that's all there is to it. Once you have the moral high ground, you win. And that's just the way I look at it. Maybe other people would dispute or debate that with me, but really and truthfully, it doesn't make any difference to me, because Evie, I'll let you into a secret. I don't care whether people dislike me or not, because if somebody hates me, what's it got to do with me? It's none of my business. If you feel you've got to tell me you dislike me, then clearly you've got a bigger issue than just disliking me, because you're trying to transfer something onto me. And it doesn't work, because I don't give a sod. I genuinely don't. If people like me, that's a real bonus. But, in reality, I suppose that's got nothing to do with me either. That's got to do with how other people feel. And that's how life is. So I just go through life doing my very best and minding my own business, getting on, helping people, doing the best I can. And if tomorrow brings me good fortune, then I'm a very lucky man. That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely, definitely. Now, you've undertaken various charity work over the years. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Oh, which one? Yeah, I mean, when I went to New Zealand, I met a guy down there called Paul Aginski, and we came up with an idea. We wanted to help inner city young people when we got back from New Zealand. So we got back. He phoned me up and said, "Am I still interested?" I said, "Absolutely." So we got into helping inner city youngsters. We set up an organization that lasted over 20 years, almost 21 years. And then because of a credit crunch, it went down. But we work with 85,000 young people. Less than 5% got in trouble again. So we made a big difference there. I was involved with a military care home called the Royal Star and Garter Home. My job was to raise millions of pounds every year, which we did, um, to help all these wonderful veterans. We kept it going, and the home is still going, but in their wisdom, they decided to end their association with me. So we did that. I'm involved in lots of things. One of my proudest things is a school in Belfast called the Fleming Fulton School. It's a special needs school, and they have a poultry club, or they did have. And I was asked to be president of the Fleming Fulton Poultry Club. And I've been over to Belfast to see the poultry club and meet the children. They're all adults, but now. But I felt very honoured to have been voted that. Um, and at the moment, I'm president of a charity called Deborah, which deals with a terrible skin condition called epidermolysis bullosa, or EB as it's known to us and to people. But EB is a terrible, terrible skin condition. And a lot of people don't live past 35. A lot of the children don't get past their first year or two. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But because of all the skin grafts and the pain I've had and not having skin on my body for around about 6 years, I didn't have skin on some parts of my body because of infection. I felt I knew a little bit about their struggles. So oddly enough, I don't do podcasts as a rule. I think yours is only the third I've ever done. And I'm going to do another one tomorrow for Evie in London. I wouldn't do it normally, but it's for the charity. So, it's, the charity side of my life, it's kind of given me something to do and some meaning, because charity is something you can make a difference in other people's lives. People wouldn't rely on charity if they could look after themselves, if they could do it themselves. But not everybody can. And if you can help, then help. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, 100%. So, what would you say then has been your proudest moment so far?
My proudest moment?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever thought about it in those terms. Yeah, in all honesty, everybody's got ego, but I'm not imbued with a huge ego. I feel happy that I've done some of the things that my mother's been able to witness. Getting my OB, getting my CBE. Those were big things for my mother. For me, just things really. I don't know. I don't know what pride feels like, to be honest with you. I know what it's like to feel proud of other people, but of myself, I don't kind of think of myself in that way. I suppose when I've done and I finished doing stuff and I'm sitting back in my retirement, if I ever retire, then I'll think about that one. But up until now, I don't really think about that. Probably one of my happiest achievements was the children's books, because just being able to do something that somebody said I couldn't. And I hate being told that I'm not good enough. If somebody says to me, you're not good enough to do something, then think again. If I prove I'm not good enough because I can't do it physically, mentally, whatever, that's fine. That is fine. But, I remember going on the Chasers quiz show, and I thought, oh, please don't tank. Please don't have a terrible time. At least you walk away with £1,000 for Deborah. Anyway, I beat the Chasers. I beat 5 of them, not 6, but 5, and I won £40,000 for the charity. That was a moment I really celebrated. I got to be honest. I didn't notice the drive home from London, even though they shut the M4, and I had to go all around the houses, and it took forever to get home. But I didn't notice that so much because I was just so excited that I'd beaten the Chasers. So yeah, I mean that was a big thing, but it was for other people. That's what I was thrilled about. I'd got £40,000 for other people. It wasn't about me. So I don't kind of think that way. My grandson's playing great rugby, union and league at the minute. He's only 13, and I genuinely stand on the touchline and feel proud for him, not for me. I'm delighted for him because my career was cut short, and I'm watching a young man do all the things that I wished I could have been able to do. So I kind of feel more proud of other people. One achievement, flying, racing cars, they're just things to do in my eyes, and if other people want to do them and they feel proud of that, then great. I'm happy for them. But even when I did the New York Marathon with a damaged ankle, and it's still causing me problems to this day, because I should never have carried on. But I didn't feel really proud about finishing that, even though I completed it with a damaged ankle in 5 hours. I just don't look at things that way.
Mm.
But the children's books and winning £40,000, they were pretty special and things that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like I think me and you have actually very similar outlooks on the idea of pride. But I think that the things you mentioned there are definitely things to be very, very proud of. So, looking forward then, do you have any sort of goals or aspirations for the future that you'd like to achieve?
Absolutely. Realistic goals to um, make some projects that I'm working on right now become a success. Um, and then there will always be the aspiration on behalf of other people. I want my grandson to achieve what he wants to achieve. I want see my grandchildren be the best version of themselves they can be. So those are important things for me. Um, but yeah, I just want to keep working. I like having something to do. I like going and doing things. Like going today, I worked with two really lovely, lovely young ladies that were very good at their job, made my involvement very easy. And that's kind of the way I am, really. I like doing things that excite me. And then I quite quickly want to move on to the next thing. I'm probably like a child in that, right, that's over. I want to do the next thing now, and I want to do it now. So I'm just somebody that's always wanting to do stuff and try and find some positivity in everything. I Yeah, no, I have no desire to retire. That's my phrase. I'm going to have that printed on a t-shirt. No desire to retire. Just want to keep working and feeling. There was a great boxer you've probably never heard of. He was a chap called Sugar Ray Leonard. And Ray was a phenomenal middleweight boxer. And he fought all the best. Marvin Hagler, Thomas Hearns, Colin Jones. Fought all these incredible people. Really tough, tough character. And I remember I used to love watching him box. And then I saw this interview with him. And they said, Ray, what is it about your life? You've been a successful manager, a successful trainer. You've got a very successful gym. You've got successful business ventures. What's been the toughest fight for you? And he said, and it stayed with me. He said, to remain relevant. And that's a big thing for me, remaining relevant, staying important in other people's lives. And that's what I want to do. And that's probably my biggest ambition, is to stay relevant and have, when I do actually march off this mortal coil and I have to go and meet my maker, I hope I have the biggest funeral in the world, that everybody thinks that I was so relevant that they want to go and say or pay their respects. So that's the kind of way I think about it.
I think that's a really great ambition to have. And I am sure that you will continue to stay very, very relevant to lots and lots of people. And on that note, thank you so, so, so much for coming on the podcast. It has been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast, especially like you mentioned, as you don't do many. So I'm super honored. But you are such an incredible person. And one of the things I really admire about you is your resilience and your positivity. And it seems like that's something that has carried on all throughout your life. And I think it's such an incredible quality to have. And I think something that we could all do with having a bit more of. But it has been such a pleasure to get to meet you. So thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure, Evie. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, and thank you to my audience for listening, and I will see you all next time.